Hi, this is Charles Kelly. Money Tips Daily, bringing you money tips to help you save, earn, invest, accumulate, and enjoy more money. I'm having trouble with my Apple phone today, my iPhone, which is not that old, but keeps freezing up. I'm just going to put my mic in. Sorry about this. Uh, let's start again. Hi, this is Charles Kelly, Money Tips Daily, bringing you money tips to help you save, earn, invest, accumulate, and enjoy more money. Thanks for joining me on Facebook and on my podcast, and anywhere else you're tuning in, and also you can find my blogs on moneytipsdaily.com. I'm having trouble with my iPhone at the moment, and I'm not telling you this to complain about it, because it's not that old, the phone, less than 2 years, and it's already starting to freeze up, battery running out. And I believe this is a deliberate attempt by Apple to get you to change phones. I mean, people in the business have told me that this is what they do. They start slowing down service to get me to upgrade from a 10 to an 11, when really there's nothing wrong with the phone. And what environmentalists are telling us is that the metals in there are precious, and that they're getting thrown away on landfill sites, and these metals are quite precious, and we should be trying to use these phones for longer. But how can we do that when the service providers and companies like Apple deliberately slow your phone down? I mean, sometimes it just freezes, and I can't do anything on the screen. It just freezes completely. Now you might say, "Oh, do your updates." Yeah, I've done my updates. Yes, I've done all that, and I've updated the software. Although I don't see why that should make any difference at all, but I've done all that anyway. Today, I wanted to talk to you about UK jobs and the UK job market. This has come out because an election's coming up, and obviously both parties are promising this and promising that, and saying that they can do better for you. They're going to spend more money, but the fact is that the UK job market here is strong. I believe unemployment is around 3.8%. Now, in 1980, unemployment was approaching 12%, and yet even then I was able to get jobs. I was in employment, but times were tough then. It was I think a worse recession. Interest rates were high, and things were hard up for a few years there. And now, yes, there has been austerity for the last few years, but the job market is strong. So what kind of jobs do British people do? Now, I mention this because I was on a property mastermind recently, as you probably gathered from my posts, and I was on a table with a guy from Greece, and talked to him about Greece, why he's here and that sort of thing. He said, "Well," I said, I know things were tough in Greece," and he said, "Well, it wasn't that bad. All the media says that." I said, "But weren't there a few riots?" And he said, "Well, there are a few riots, but every country has riots." He said, "So things are not bad in Athens." So I said, "So the obvious question then is, well, what are you doing here in London if things are so great there?" And he said something interesting. He said, "The UK is the best place to make money, or the best place to build wealth in the whole of Europe." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, it's very hard to build wealth in Athens, and if you're starting from scratch and you haven't got family money." And he's worked in other countries in Europe, and he said it's the same thing, that other countries do not have the entrepreneurial spirit that we have in the UK. It's harder to raise money. It's harder to just do things. People are much more conservative. So he feels that the best place in Europe to make money is in the UK. And I've seen this with companies coming to Britain to raise funds through angel funding and venture capital funding. So what type of jobs can you expect to get in the UK if you come to work in the UK? Well, most jobs in the UK are in the services industry. We're not really a heavy manufacturing country anymore, although we still do manufacture things. But most jobs are, there's a breakdown here, 25% of jobs are in public, admin, education and health. So the health service, teaching, they employ a lot of people. But if you take that as a percentage, 25%, that's not too bad. In some countries, public service jobs, state jobs are well over half the jobs in the whole country, and I don't think that's sustainable. 22% are in finance and business. Obviously, the city being a massive employer in the UK and a massive contributor to our GDP and our wealth. This is not just in banking, but it's in the stock market, in city trading, and also insurance, which has always been a high invisible earner. Things like Lloyd's of London. Lloyd's of London is nothing to do with Lloyd's Bank. It's an insurance market that's been around for hundreds of years. It was almost formed, in the city of London. The insurance market, the stock market, was all formed in that area. And it was a very clever way of raising money for projects and then providing insurance for shipping, for businesses and all sorts of things. So that's in the city. Then 21% are in retail, hotel and restaurants. Obviously London, just London alone gets nearly 20 million tourists. If you go into London right now, it's packed with tourists going to the theatre, hotels, restaurants, bars, nightlife. All the attractions on in London and the tubes and everything are packed with people. Then talking about tubes, transport 10% in transport and communications, other services 6%, 8% is manufacturing, 7% is construction, which I was a bit surprised. I thought there'd be more people in construction because there's a lot of construction projects going on, and then 2% in agriculture, which is also surprising because we're a big farming country. If you go outside of London, it's agriculture. So that's a few facts about the kind of jobs you'd expect. Now, the growing trend also is more women are in work, and women make up about half the workforce, but more people are staying in work longer. So that's an important trend to note, that in 1990 the proportion of people in work who were over 50 was 21%. It's now 32%, and it's 40%. I said nearly half the people in work are women. That's gone up substantially since the 70s and early 80s, but it's a trend that more people are working longer. Now, I'm not sure it's because they want to work longer. I think it's got more to do with the fact that perhaps they cannot afford to retire because they haven't got the pensions that they had in past years. So is that a worrying trend? Well, I've said it before, and I've said it in my book, Money Can Buy You Happiness, that pensions is a big time bomb that's coming, that so many people have not got enough savings to retire. The average savings in the UK is around £5,000. Well, how's that going to help you retire? So you can see now the figures are bearing out what I have noticed anecdotally, that people are working longer into their working life, and perhaps they'll be working until they almost drop because they just won't be able to afford to retire. And a lot of people are in problems with things like housing, mortgages. Mortgages are difficult to get now when you're older. Some people can't renew their mortgages, so there's a lot of people underlying it, that you don't see in the economy that are in problems and having problems. A lot of the retail sector jobs have closed down this year. 2,800 stores have closed down in the first half of this year, and there have been some big closures because of the Amazon effect. People buying stuff online. I say support your high street and try and buy stuff in shops. Don't just order stuff online if you want when you need to, but don't do it as a matter of automatic course. I mean, who wants to buy stuff online and then go to one of these places in the back of a car park to get your stuff out of a box? I mean, that's not much fun for shopping, is it, really? And they have to send it back because it doesn't fit. Go to the shop and try stuff and buy it there. That's my view. And self-employed people, the number of self-employed people is rising rapidly. It's gone from 3.5 million in 2005 up to nearly 5 million now. And temporary workers, there's still a lot of temporary workers, part-time workers. The number of workers on 0-hour contracts has gone up from 2005 to nearly 1 million now. These are people who are on contracts which they're not on a regular job. They're on contracts where the employer can use them for X amount of hours, or they can work for X amount of hours, and then if they're not needed, they're not employed. The BBC make a big deal out of this on the news, but in fact they're one of the worst culprits. They employ thousands of people, most of their people on 0-hour contracts, and they never take them on for permanently. I had tenants who worked at the BBC, and they'd been there for 12 years and still didn't have a regular permanent job. They were taken on for 6-9 months, laid off, come back next year because we don't want you to be a permanent feature, a permanent employee. Well, that's not a very honest way of employing people for a big organisation that is funded by us, the taxpayer, the state, if you like. Full-time jobs are still the norm. There are the job market in the UK, 30 million people work in the UK, yeah? And then we have, in those, we have self-employed, part-time, but the actual full-time employees are up to sort of 16 million, so that there's still a strong job market. And the number of hours have gone down that people work on average. Now, obviously, if you go back to sort of the 1800s, people were working 63 hours a week. They were probably working 6-7 days a week on the farms, from dawn till dusk. Well, now the average apparently in 2015 had gone down to 32 hours. And this is, I see this as a trend. Now, the Labour Party have said that if they come into power, they want to reduce the working week to four days a week, which is great. You think, oh, we'll all work 4 days a week and have fun. But if you're an employer and you run your business 5 and 6 days a week, what are you going to do? How are you going to find those other employees? You're going to have to take on more staff. It will cost more. So I personally think it's a ludicrous proposal, and it will make us uncompetitive, especially with growing Asian markets. And it's just not going to work. It hasn't worked in France. It won't work here. The minimum wage has helped people. It's gone up substantially, and also the amount that people pay in tax has gone down. Now you can earn 12,000 a year before you pay any tax in the UK. So a lot of people on minimum wage are hardly paying any tax at all. And pay is improving, but not for everyone. The amount of actual pay growth, it has slowed in the last few years. If you go back to the actual growth in pay rate went down, it's now going up. But the average wage is around about £500 a week, 27,000 a year. That's the average wage, but it hasn't grown as much as it could have done because we've had sort of recessionary trends over the last 10 years. If you go back to 2010, the country was nearly bankrupt after the financial crisis. So the new government came in. They had to bring in measures to bring spending under control. So that's a few facts about UK jobs. If you're listening to this from abroad, then the UK still needs a lot of medical staff. It still needs teachers. It needs highly skilled people. I don't think we need more baristas and casual labourers and cleaners. We need people who are highly skilled, nurses, doctors, those sort of workers that can come in and contribute to the economy, because they will earn enough to pay tax. A low-skilled worker is not going to contribute to the country because they're not going to be paying much tax, and they will be a net drain on the economy because, clearly if they're not paying tax but they're living here and maybe topping up their employment, their wages with benefits, if they've got children as well, that costs money to send children to school, average of £5,000 per child. So we still need, nursing is still a shortage. It was a shortage when I was in nurse recruitment many years ago, and it's come around full circle again that we need nurses now. But it is still difficult to come here as a nurse because you need the language qualifications, you need to pass the test. But NHS hospitals are recruiting, and they will give assistance for people with language tests and passing those online tests to come in to work in the UK. It's still a great place to live and work, that you can get on here, you can get mortgages, you can buy properties, and I think it's still a great country. You can get on here regardless of your family background and your history. Things are open here to everybody, and there's great education here. And there's great education for people who want to learn new skills that they've learned in adult education. There's lots of colleges and further education and universities that work in the evenings around people that work, mature students as they call them. So I still think it's a great country to live, and I still think it will be a great country to live after Brexit, whichever way that goes. So there you go. That's a little bit about the UK job market, and as I said, we are a service-based economy with 8 out of 10 jobs now going into some sort of services or that kind of industry. Okay, thanks for listening, and I'll speak to you again soon. This is Charles Kelly, bringing you money tips to help you save, earn, invest, accumulate, and enjoy more money.